Hello everyone, and welcome to the Pillars of Salt LARP education class number 6? Should be 4. Sorry about that. We are going through Discipline Tricks number 3. This is going to be dealing with a lot of the Bloodline powers. Now, everyone who's joining us on the Twitch channel, I will make my point to go and try to deal with any of the questions and comments that you bring up there, but let's kind of get started on this discussion. One of the things I'd like to bring up before we go too deep into it is a little piece about the Rarity of Cool. That any person who is attempting to actually run a basic canon story, as you would imagine, by White Wolf, is going to have incredibly few members of the Bloodlines in an average LARP. You should be having an average Camarilla game, you should be having an average Sabbat game, and if you're running those types of scenarios, you're looking at maybe 1 in 10 to maybe 1 in 20 for a Camarilla Court game to actually be a Bloodline with these powers. Now you're like, well, Patrick, then if these are such rare things, why are we having a conversation about them at all? And it's twofold. First, any vampire can learn a power from another vampire. And really neat things in people's history, adding a piece or two is a great way for storytellers to kind of add some flavor for someone's background. And it also allows a storyteller to have 1 or 2 very noteworthy things to make a big impact. And if you see one of these big impacts in your game, you're able to kind of go and maybe, if you're interested in one of these powers we're going to talk about, you can kind of investigate that. In the Sabbat, it's a little bit more common. You have the Salubri Anti-Tribu, so you're going to be getting some Valarie. Casids are much more common in the Sabbat, so you're going to be getting Mythosyria. Really, those are kind of that angle. Now, the last part I'm going to really want to talk about with the Rarity of Cool is it is nigh impossible, if you are not a member of one of these clans, to have a power that is listed here above the first 2 levels. There is no mechanical process for a person to learn a bloodline discipline from a person who is not of that bloodline. There is no merit that gives one of these powers in clan. Thus, you must be drinking blood from one of these creatures and presumably taught by someone who is this, and they don't spread very far. So I've heard stories about people in poorly kind of organized situations where they're like, well, Mythosyria is so intense because it just knocks people down, and you take them out, they don't have a chance. And I'm like, but you're looking at maybe 25, 30 cases in the world, 50 if you're being generous. Those people are not going to commonly go to a game, let alone stick around to teach you their ancient powers while you drink of their vitae. This is the only thing that keeps these people alive. So, more than fine, you're going to get a level 1 or 2 out of these people. You're never going to learn their high-level abilities. Those really should be for NPCs and the incredibly rare bloodlines that are meant to show the rarity of the World of Darkness. Okay. Now let's get started. Moines Ian. Moines Ian is a weird power I'd like to talk a little about before we get into it. It is a power that you are invested by the nature of the Infernal, and it allows you to tap into that Infernal power. Now, BNS and other references are incredibly clear that while you're infernally tainted, while you're using the first few levels, you are not irredeemable until you get level 5 or above. At that point, you've completely signed on the demon piece, you're kind of good to go. You almost should be an NPC. But BNS decided to make infernalism just a merit, and kind of pushing that infernalism is much more common and not just a storyteller kind of fiat thing. So Moines is going to be a little bit more common because the aspect of the demons talking to you, if you're an infernalist, the connections to that, they might be willing to teach you this power. If you're actually Bloodline Baali, an Angelus Satyr, or like a Baali that is not infernalist, like an Order of Malak kind of Talmei thing, you also would be accessing this power. So the first level here is called Sense the Sin. You spend a blood and have a standard action. You gaze into the target's soul. You make an opposed challenge against the target. If successful, you understand how many beast traits and what their mortality level is. You know exactly how your target gained the beast trait they possess, specifically where, when, and what circumstances, and for what reasons. With an exceptional success, you can read the target's spirit for the rest of the night without a further challenge. If you have focused perception and the target has no beast traits, you instead learn the approximate date of the last time they did and why they earned those traits. Most people will also say that this is an avenue to begin to understand if other people are infernal. If I know you gained your beast trait because you didn't kill that holy man, you're probably on Path of Evil Revelations. This kind of connection piece, if you're having it or you see other people thinking about using it, it almost should always be done through a staffer, going to the person, doing the tests, because everyone's going to be looking at you funky if you walk up and say, tell me your last beast trait. They're going to go dive to their book and say, what the hell is doing that? And it's going to be kind of problematic. Now, Fear of the Void below is super dominant. You spend a blood point and have a standard action to bind a promise to you from another character. If the target breaks the promise that is bound by this power, they must contest against infernal entities in hell. Activating this power requires an opposed challenge. The promise must be made of the target's free will. Likewise, breaching this promise must be of their own free will and not coerced by outside supernatural forces. Willingly breaking a promise triggers a static challenge, mental plus survival, equal to the mental plus academics of the caster. There are no retests. If the victim fails this challenge, they lose 1 willpower and must immediately repeat the challenge. This stacks and cascades. It only stops when a target wins the challenge or runs out of willpower. If you have the focus, if the target breaks their promise, they lose a willpower before making the first test. Now, it's a great erosional way to convince someone who's not paying attention to lose all their willpower before you kind of take them out. It's a rough test. Not a lot of people invest in survival, and having a mental plus survival is a particularly odd combination test. Now, it also mentions here it does not trigger if it is forced beyond your ability. If you get dominated not to tie your shoes, if you get told, tell me you're not going to tie your shoes tonight, and a guy dominates you to tie your shoes, you're under no compulsion for the triggering. If you couldn't control the act, you're fine. Now, we have our first question here. Does being tainted or just knowing Dominion in any way make you more susceptible to Demon the Fallen or other powers such as that? So, if more susceptible is a problem for vampires, because vampires cannot contain the aspects of faith necessary for demons to feed, and their powers essentially are acting as if you are almost a neutral agent in the scenario. Infernalism is not going to necessarily make you more susceptible, but it will more likely make you more recognizable, and you would also be able to tell them more. If you sense the sin, I would say, on a Demon the Fallen, you're going to instantly know like their torment levels and be able to very quickly determine that that's what they are. Even with aura perception, without the proper lores, you'd kind of be out of luck. Okay. Now, Malpalmony. This is the power of the Daughters of Cacophony. They're one of the more commonly used bloodlines because First, they are incredibly apolitical. They are allowed to kind of go between the Sabbat and the Camarilla. They also are incredibly social, so it works very well to have them in court-based games. There are also early powers that are not particularly over the top and are great for social environments, so most storytellers are pretty happy to have this kind of pass around between their group. Now, the first ability of Melpalmi is the missing voice. You spend a blood point and do a simple action to modify your voice. You may utilize any sound the human voice can produce, from the deepest passato to the highest soprano. You also may increase your volume beyond standard human range, resonating over other noises like a living megaphone. If you have 3 or more dots in performance, quote-unquote singing, you can identically replicate any voice you have studied for at least 5 minutes, regardless of that individual's vocal tone. If you have the focus, your missing voice is the exception to the rule that Melpalmi cannot be captured by recordings or carried by electronic means. The character may use missing voice to speak someone else's voice over a telephone or full of voice-activated security system. Now, key tricks for this. First, you absolutely, when the guy turns around, you can have his boss say, go kill that guy in the middle of a gunfight, and there will be confusion because they have to roleplay like it is similar. They're not actually given an active test in here to determine that it's wrong. If you have the 3 dots in performance, boom, boom, you have perfect mimicry. And that's, obviously keep the mechanic low, but that's incredibly powerful. Also, it would allow you to kind of have a game-wide noise scenario. If you know things are happening, kind of remember the old Police Academy movies, you nearly can replicate any sound as long as a storyteller would determine that your performance was high enough. You start making a few machine gun noises with your mouth, and a lot of people are going to start to run. It's a great way to kind of almost preserve the masquerade. Oh, everyone run away, there's guns. Now, on the recording piece, it's incredibly great to blackmail people for boons. Well, I have this piece that says you said that. If they don't know you have Melpalmi, they're going to be like, well, I didn't do that. Well, it must have been dominated out of you because we have hard evidence here. And most people are going to kind of accept that. Now, Phantom Speaker, you spend 1 blood point and do a simple action. Your voice can emanate from any location within your line of sight or from any location you're familiar with. You do not have to move your lips or otherwise show signs of speaking. If you choose, you may allow 1 person to respond in kind. Their voice will be softly emanate with just your hearing. You can have only 1 application of Phantom Speaker in operation at a time. However, you may carry on 2 conversations simultaneously, one being through Phantom Speaker and one through your normal speech in front of you. If a character has the Aspect's power of heightened senses with 3 steps of a location where Phantom Speaker emanates, they will overhear the conversation held through the Phantom Speaker. Focus Charisma. Rather than using Phantom Speaker on a target or location you can see, you can use it on any individual you're familiar with, regardless of range. Your voice emanates from just behind the target, allowing you to communicate with them. Further, if you wish, you may allow your target's voice to echo back to you. Now, this is the poor man's telepathy with a few flaws and just direct interaction. If you kind of don't get more than that. And you're looking at 8 XP for an out-of-clan, that's pretty solid. If you're not an actual person who has Auspex in clan, getting this for your conversations, boom, boom, is great. And especially, like, I'm getting jumped by guys, I gotta tell the prince, hey prince, I'm being attacked by these 5 people, and you never had to move your mouth while they were trying to torture you or get information out of you. Okay? We're now going to move on to, Mythosyria. Now, Mythosyria is the power of the Casids and the Magar. The Magar and the Casids are Fey-embraced creatures. The Casid were manipulated and kind of created by like the Lasombra thing. I haven't really read a lot of their detail in Lore of the Bloodlines. The Magar kind of are given the representation that they were just embraced from different types of changelings. Now, If you're not pushing a changeling aspect in your game, we know that Changeling the Dreaming is coming out eventually as the third VNS game. It creates a lot less emphasis in this power. Think about if you're having K-Sids and other type of people with this ability in, you're almost diminishing it if you don't begin to put in some type of Fey or Symmetrical events. It's almost like saying, hey, I'm not going to deal with animals, but I'm going to have all these gangrel with animalism. Understand any K-Sid in a game is going to need to be expanding like a Fey story. So the first power is called Fey Sight. It is always active. You can read an object's purpose and age at a glance, tell forgeries from the originals, and correctly identify the materials used in the item's creation. You can also make certain readings on the item's creator, including how many dots of the craft skill was used, and their basic creature type, and how long ago it was created. Further, you recognize creatures' individuals, powers, and enchantments of the Fey origin. You cannot learn their capacity. Your Fey Sight only allows you to discern that such effects are present. You can see their immortal coil versus their seemings, etc. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. You cannot learn their capacity. Your Fey Sight allows you to discern. I thought you would be able to actually see your seemings. Maybe they actually changed that a little bit more in BNS. But let's kind of go into the focus. If an object is hidden latches or compartments, you instantly discover them. You discover a code or pattern necessary to unlock a door or compartment by spending 3 full turns studying the lock. The lock requires a key, and if you expend 3 turns in study, however, you will recognize it on sight whether or not a particular key will fit that lock. So they kind of added a little bit more flavor, but at the end of the day, it should be focusing on the Changeling piece. Darkling Trickery. You spend a blood point, use a standard action, and engage your target in an opposed challenge using the Mythotheria test pool. If successful, you cause your target to be plagued by annoyances and setbacks for the next hour as the Fae play pranks on them, causing no end of trouble for the target. Out of combat, the victim's card keys may disappear, their cell phone may run out of power, they may stand up and find their shoestrings tied together. In combat, anytime your victim spends a willpower point to use combat maneuvers, their attack will automatically fail. This power has no effect on attacks augmented by combat maneuvers that were enacted without spending willpower. Exceptional success. This Darkling Trickery lasts for the rest of the night rather than for an hour. The Focus Perception allows all the target's attacks that are augmented by combat maneuvers to automatically fail, even if the maneuver was enacted without spending willpower. It's just hijinks. It's almost just like kind of a different level of demontation. It is what it is. If there is an active Changeling plot, if there's other kind of movement, there's a power I don't have listed here, but it allows K-Sids or people with this power to actually call upon Changeling to do tasks for them that will give them extra downtimes. That's kind of incredibly over the top, that you get downtime. If you have the specialty, you even get 2, one at game and one outside of game. Now we have another question from the chat here. How is Fey Sight not just a way more powerful aspect Spirit Touch? Or, is it? Okay. Simplest answer, it is. It allows the basic aspects of Spirit Touch without having to touch it. That's a big key win. You just look at it. There is no other power that allows you to be able to remember and experience Seemings and Changelings and other Fey creatures. Every other person is going to gradually forget, unless they're Malkavian, they have a kind of a little higher chance, but statistically, unless you have some Mythotheria, you're gonna be out of the picture. Spirit Touch in amongst itself is weaker than Fey Sight, but none of the other powers in Mythotheria really help with observation. So if you have the opportunity to learn both, or you have to choose between one or the other, obviously you take the rarer power first. But that was a great question. Now, let's go to Obeah. The bloodlines for Obeah are the Salubri and the Nenkuzalo, which essentially are just the African Salubri. Now, if you have Obeah, you can never have Valarie. If you have Valarie, you can never have Obeah. That's what it seems to imply in the modern age. In the Dark Ages, that doesn't seem to happen at all. Incredibly, Elder Salubri seem to learn them willy-nilly back and forth just for ludicrous amounts of XP, but BNS, I think, is trying to make it that you don't feel obligated to have both. You're almost locked down by only having one. Now remember, the Salubri are going to have a flaw where they cannot willingly take blood from. They cannot take blood from someone who is resisting it. So remember, this is the healing power. This is the essence of support. Now, sense vitality with 1 blood in a simple action. For the next hour, you gain the instinctive ability to perceive the health of any creature that comes within 10 steps of you. You know if the target is alive, dead or undead, mortal, revenant, example, vampire. Targets currently, their number of wounds and the number of their remaining health levels. The location and severity of any injuries the target currently suffers. Whether the target suffers from any diseases, etc., and which ones. Whether the target has any drugs poisoned in their systems, and if so, which ones. The deposition of all organs, bones, musculature, and other physical structure of the target body. You realize if any organs have been removed or shifted, such as Heart of Darkness, misplaced heart, or you did some vicissitude and put your brain, let's say, in your belly. Sense vitality overcomes supernatural effects to obscure that individual's health level, such as misleading wounds or similar powers. If you have focused perception, Obeya focuses on the challenge on defense and healing. By spending 1 blood point and using a simple action, you can use sense vitality and 5+ bonus challenge on using medicine skill or when you're attempting to diagnose a person's cause of death. A lot of this is give me a scan of the area, beep beep. I kind of have the whole gist around me and give me some data. Now, if you're though playing one of the rare few Salubris that are still left of like the 7 or 8 that are around, this is definitely a power you're going to want to get a storyteller to walk up and answer for you. And it makes it so mechanically annoying because you get so much data. You have to be like, okay, if you guys walk up, hey storyteller, give me all this data about him. I'll talk to you another 10 minutes when you finish answering all these questions and writing them down. So, maybe for the mechanical goal, the Tremere should have just finished the job. Now, anesthetic touch. You spend 1 blood point and use a standard action to target a willing subject within 1 step. For the next hour, the target feels no pain and suffers no wound penalties. If your target is a mortal, she is put into a state of peaceful sleep. Mortal creatures will heal 3 points of normal damage after resting a full 8 hours under this effect. Anesthetic touch can only be used on willing targets. With focused wits, you can spend 1 blood point in a simple action to use anesthetic touch on a willing target within your line of sight. Handing out essentially fortitude aspects to all your friends that they're not going to have wound penalties. It's nice. It's not an incredibly over-the-top power. Now, Temporis. Temporis is the time manipulation power of the true Bruja. Now, the true Bruja originally were only a Talmay Ra kind of a group, or Incarnu. They've since expanded them where there is certain true Bruja that have made alliances with Setites, and they are kind of extra mysterious kinds of things. They are commonly called the True Jaw, as our chat has kind of brought up. Now, if you have any aspect of celerity, you can never have Temporis. If you have any Temporis, you can never have celerity. There is a merit in Lore of the Bloodlines where you're able to use your Temporis levels as celerity levels to essentially properly impersonate a false jaw, I guess, a normal Bruja. And because if you walk up to the Bruja and they're like, hey buddy, we're all gonna go use our celerity for our initiative burn, and you're like, yeah buddies, yeah, I'll do that later time, save my blood. They're eventually gonna pick up something's wrong. So I really hope that any chronicle that allows True Bruja is going to also allow some of their really neat merits from Lore of the Bloodlines. Now, Hourglass of the Mind. When active, in addition to granting extremely accurate time sense, this allows you to keep track of the exact time down to a millisecond. This level of Temporis also grants you a unique sensitivity to any disturbances in the flow of time. Within a mile radius, you automatically sense when time is being manipulated, whether through use of Temporis or other supernatural powers that alter time. Mage Time Sphere, Changeling Chronos, etc. You can auto-sense the use of powers that grant extra actions, such as celerity when used 1,000 feet from you. Further, you can read an object's age at a glance. With a focus of stamina, in addition to knowing your target's total dots of temporis or celerity, you can also discern the specific powers they possess, including techniques and elder powers. Now, the focus here reminded me of something. Temporis is kind of kooky. Every level of temporis's focus is stamina. Not a lot of other powers are like, hey, you buy one focus and you're doubling down all the way. So that's kind of interesting. Most of the power of Hourglass of the Mind is going to be a storyteller thing coming to you and saying, hey, there's some mage manipulating time over there. Maybe you guys should go investigate it. Or, excuse me, or there is another true draw in the city and he's gone bad, or he's infernal or whatever. Here's how you sense him. The using celerity within 1,000 feet of you is never going to work right, because when they start using it for combat, the staffers there are going to be sitting there dealing with the combat, not going, oh man, I forgot to go run to the secret true draw and told them there was a fight going on over there. It's a little annoying. But it's what it was in the book. Can't really add more to it. Nick of Time. You spend 1 blood point, and using a simple action, you can draw a common object to you from some other point in time. These things must have been lost or misplaced and will never be missed by their owners. These items are things the item is common and nondescript example of its type. You may choose to draw forth a desert ingol with or a pretty painting, but you can't bring the sheriff's gun or a Mona Lisa. If you choose to draw a weapon, the storyteller will determine the weapon's specific qualities. If the weapon is a gun, they have 1 full clip of ammunition. For information on weapons qualities, check out Chapter 13. Normally, a storyteller will take one of their random weapon cards and just hand it to you. Oh, you wanted a gun? Here's a gun. If you have the focus, though, you can say exactly the traits you want. This is supposedly the only mechanic I have ever seen that, by BNS's rules, would allow you to take weapons that are not listed in the back chart. If you're at a game that is razor exact on we're only doing BNS, no drop of anything else. If there is someone who is a true draw with 2 levels of this and the focus, that's the moment for them to start handing out long-range spray guns and all these other kinds of crazy things that aren't in the book, but definitely have not said that you can't do. Okay? Now, it is beyond the first 2 levels, but one of the other major things that True Draw can do is they are the only BNS method to have a second round mental or social action. They are able to manipulate time in such a way that they're able to get a follow-up that is not necessarily only physical. Okay? Yes, and the improvisational weapon of the last sock ever lost. No one's going to remember it, and everyone's going to be like, well, I lose socks all the time, but you got that sock again. The fact that also these are permanent is just really extreme. Like, you could just start, there's nothing in here that says there's a limit to it. Hey guys, we're just walked into Elysium, let me start pulling out handguns to give to all my buddies. Oh, you need a few flak vests? Oh, I just spent like 10 blood. Hey, just give me some blood and we're good to go. It's for level 2. It's a big winner level 2. Kind of last to say about the True Draw, if you actually have the time and the experience to play one, there is a lot of ambiguity in those level 2s and level 3s. I mean level 3 and level 4s. Make a point to read them exactly. Ask your questions for your storyteller, because there's a lot of ambiguity where that kind of comes into play. We have one person that says there is a technique that will allow you to do a mental social in a celerity round. So maybe with a technique that's possible. Let's go to the next power. Samedi. Thanatosis, the power of the Samedi is a nature that it's a power that allows you to manipulate the parts of corpses and make things more corpse-like. If you kind of, again, Lore of the Bloodline's a beautiful book. Can't advocate it enough. If you're experiencing these kinds of people or you have the opportunity to play one, definitely read deeper. Their canon has manipulated so much over time, you're really going to want to focus on what the new information is. Now, first level's Hag's Wrinkles. You spend a standard action tugging and twisting your skin. You can open folds and pouches in your flesh. These pouches are capable of storing items about the size of a large handgun. And additionally, you can slightly alter your appearance by over-tightening the skin around your face and allowing it to hang wrinkled and loose. These changes will be not enough to fool uninformed. These may be enough to fool uninformed mortals, but they do not alter your appearance enough to fool someone who knows you. If you have the focus wits, the flaps and folds can impede weapons, slip sliding over your muscle and deflecting blows that would otherwise harm you. You receive a +1 bonus defensive pool when targeted by a brawl or melee attack, and you're +5 when escaped from a grapple. Most of the time, it's people hiding small stuff. Hey, no, I don't have my cell phone that's recording the entire Elysium. It's I don't have that gun in my pocket. Now, it seems to imply that all the pouches can hold up to one gun, because it says these pouches. You definitely want to speak to a storyteller about how much you can hold, because most stories will be like, oh, well, you put a gun in your lung, and then you put your cell phone in your bicep, and you're kind of controlling that. From the Peanut Gallery, one of the things is Hag Wrinkles is frickin' nasty. Well, they're not looking so hot to begin with, since all the Semitia are rotting corpses to begin with. They're kind of ugly to start. Now, the next one, Putrefaction. You spend 1 blood point and use a standard action to rot any organic, inanimate object you touch to the point of uselessness. A single application of putrefaction can destroy wood, cloth, plastic, and rubber, but harder items such as metal, glass, and stone will require 2 or more applications of this power. Objects larger than a standard door will require 1 more application as well to destroy regardless of its material composition. The power has no effect on living or undead matter, but can be used to rot actual dead bodies into unrecognizability. If you have the focus, you may spend 1 blood point to use a standard action to destroy a wooden stake that is currently piercing your heart. This is an exception to the rule that prevents a character from spending blood or taking actions while staked. Yes, one of the other comments we just have is heightened senses while staying next to Semitia is not particularly fun, as you theoretically have increased smell and you get all their stinkiness. Now, Semitia are another one of these bloodlines that are really good for storytellers to use. They are common enough in the Camarilla and the Sabbat. They're renowned mercenaries, and it's just enough for someone to kind of skim that line of rare without, oh my god, this is a plot-changing chronicle moment that this type of person has come into game. Now, Valarie. Valarie is for the warrior salubres. And if you have any Obeah, just like we said, you can't have Valarie unless you're a Magic Dark Age guy. Now, Sense Vitality, it's going to sound a lot like the one we just did. You spend a blood point, and for next hour you have the instinctive ability to perceive the health of any creature, whether it's alive, dead, or undead, number of wounds, location, severity of injury, whether the target suffers disease, has any drug or poisons in them, their organs have been moved. It automatically allows you to overcomes scene obscuring health. Now, if you have the focus, it focuses on offense and causing pain. Consequently, while Sense Vitality is active, you do not need to spend a willpower point to maneuver to pierce the heart. But magically, you somehow, okay, I'm going to take a moment, a little sidetrack. This is directly saying that I don't know, on average, someone's health levels. So, when in God's green earth am I ever going to be able to stake somebody? Because if I don't know your health level, that you're now incapacitated when before you weren't, because I needed Valarie or Obeah to know your wound level, I'm metagaming, I guess, every time I try to do a staking test Because I don't know what level wound you are. I just fail. So I'm just poking that piece of wood in different parts of you where you're like, get away, get away. It just makes... Staking is an issue I have. The way that it was versus the way it is now, it makes it that really, if you want it to incapacitate a guy, you just knock them in torpor. There's no reason to be staking people. Unless you just want to get them up a little quicker, because it is so hard to stake. Now, next, Burning Touch. You use a standard action to grapple a target. If you are successful and spend 1 blood point to inflict the Burning Touch on the victim, as well as all the standard effects of the grapple combat maneuver. The target will suffer -3 penalty to all actions until your next Everyman initiative. If you are currently grappling your target, you can activate Burning Touch by simply spending a a blood point. Burning Touch inflicts pain on anyone who's touching you, but individuals who are not grappled can simply flinch away without suffering penalties. Despite popular belief, you are not engulfed by fire. Powers that allow an individual to resist pain do not overcome the pain caused by Burning Touch, unless specifically noted in that power's description. If another character is touching or grappling you while you spend the blood point to activate Burning Touch, the individual might choose to either let go or suffer the same effects as the target, -3 penalty till your initiative until next Everyman round. If you have the Wit's Focus, those who have felt your Burning Touch have its agony seared into their subconscious. The threat of torture from a Valarie wielder will give the most stoic character a reason to reconsider their stubbornness. Anyone who's been affected by your Burning Touch will suffer a -5 penalty to resist intimidation-based interrogation challenges. This effect cannot be used to augment supernatural powers. So, kind of mild. You're in a grapple, things are already kind of a little extreme. I guess you can be like, hey, Tremere, don't hit me with a Cauldron of Blood, because you're going to be feeling some pain. Yeah, the fact that there's no wound is kind of a problem. Okay, one of the questions we have as a random sidebar, is there any other merit and flaw or power that allows a PC to move or remove their organs outside of being a Setite? Vicissitude is the #1 power that allows you to do that, and the merit Misplaced Heart, where your heart is in a different location. To fully remove, there is some thaumaturgy rituals that allow you to cut off someone's hand and have it like not regrow, or remove someone's eye and not regrow. They were punishment things. They're pretty rare outside of Vicissitude. Vicissitude is kind of the common choice for that to kind of kick over. Now, Tikka. Tikka is the power of the gargoyles. Why slave gargoyles were removed from BNS, I don't know. They are so rampant in the nature of Lore of the Bloodlines, and even before, everyone knew there had to be gargoyles hidden in little rooms. I'm going to take a little tiny sidebar. There is a beautiful moment where they talk about kind of gaslit gargoyles, where you got a gargoyle and you made him, and then you put him in your basement, you staked him for like a week or two, and then you pulled out the stake and said, hey buddy, I made you in the 1400s before it was illegal, and you've been in this basement for centuries. Sorry you never had a chance to learn disciplines or your blood kind of generate. Let me dominate that in you so you absolutely believe that. Now come on out. It's legal eagle. Let's go be friends. That was a great little kind of section they had in Lore of the Bloodlines for gargoyles. Now, Tikka also is kind of unique that it wasn't originally a discipline. It was thaumaturgical rituals used on the gargoyles to give them powers that they had to constantly go back to their Tremere masters to imbue. Eventually it became part of their natural blood. Let's kind of go through those levels now. Skin of the Chameleon. For 1 blood point and a simple action to activate for 1 hour, you must be currently unobserved by mortals in order to activate. So as long as you draw no attention to yourself, mortals will assume that you are an expected and legitimate part of their surroundings. They will assume you have an authentic reason to be there, and they will not question your presence. If asked afterwards, they will describe you in generalities. Even if your appearance is particularly bestial or horrific, like Gargoyle Nosferatu appears, As long as you take simple steps to avoid attention, such as wearing a hat or turning up your collar, you can do nothing to make people notice you. Mortals in your area will avoid you. You can interact with mortals while under the effect of this power as long as you do not startle them or give them any reason to scrutinize your appearance. After such a conversation, the mortal will only remember you as a bland-seeming individual with the proper credentials to be present and very little more. Skin of the Chameleon fails if you attempt to enter a private location. If you have the focus, it will work on supernatural creatures such as vampires as well as mortals. Supernatural creatures who encounter you may make an opposed challenge using their mental plus willpower versus you. Your mental versus stealth. Characters with the Auspex technique receive a bonus to this test equal to the number of Auspex powers they possess. Elder powers count towards this bonus, but techniques do not. This is the basic aspect in that cartoon gargoyles a lot of us saw when we were kids, and Goliath somehow walks around with a trench coat and a fedora, and no one seems to have a problem with him until he begins to kick ass and take names. This is the basic power of that. It allows easy masquerade kind of movings and this and that. Now, I really have issues with the private location. What if it's your private location? And so no one is going to presume that they kind of can't do that. So you only can do this in open air locations. Not every release of them is open air. Not every kind of average game is an open air scenario. What really is public is kind of an issue. Like, oh, well, we can all live at City Hall because it's a public location. Yes, from the Twitch group, they're saying exactly that's what I was thinking, the cartoon, and how many times he just wrapped his rings around him and suddenly it was a coat. That's kind of where you're going with that. Now, scry the Hearthstone. You spend 1 blood point and spend a full turn of concentration. You get a complete sense of the building's layout and inhabitants at that moment. You receive accurate information about the building's design, each room, to every secret passage or hidden chamber. You also learn the location, approximate size, and general type, whether they're humanoids or animals, of any and all living and undead creatures within the building. This building may be as large as a mansion. To acquire detailed information about a massive superstructure or a skyscraper, the storyteller may require you to activate this power every few floors. You can utilize Scry the Hearthstone by expending a simple action rather than a full turn for a focused perception. That seems kind of useless, but okay. If the second you walk in, if you can't spend 1 turn to check out what's going on, that's kind of a problem. Now, there is probably no power I have seen that is more absolutely storyteller conversation than this. Your gargoyle walks in, does the power, everyone might as well go out and go get a soda or something, because the storyteller is now going to have to go through all this conversation to say, oh, well, you know, on the 5th floor, there's a guy, he's about like 5 foot, maybe, he's not too tall, and he's a human, he's not a vampire. Okay, now let's go through the next person, because if they don't take the effort to do that, 6 points for in-clan and 8 for out is an exceptionally large amount of money, a large amount of XP for me to not have some value out of this power. Okay? And we are now at the last of the Bloodline powers. I hope that this has been very helpful for everyone. You get a little aspect of where the Bloodlines go and the different powers from them. I'm going to leave this open for a moment or two to let anyone from the chat ask a question about any Bloodline power. Our next class, I'm still deciding if we're going to just kind of stick on the mechanic pieces that we've been doing so far, or if we should move to something a little bit more lore-based, or something a little bit more on our first class of like how you defeat the people who are messing with you. Maybe we might do a class on how to get titles or get status, or maybe nature of the Black Hand or something like that. So definitely post your comments on things you would like to see. And I'm going to give this another 2 minutes to see if we're going to have any other questions. And then I think we're going to be good to go. So, can you diablo someone for a bloodline power? Okay. Mechanically, under straight BNS, no. Particularly, a storyteller should allow some leeway in that. If I am going to diablerize an ancient salubri, it is completely great for that Tremere that did that diablerie, all of a sudden they start growing a third eye. There's some really great role-playing in that. Hunting down people who have incredibly high levels of disciplines just to kind of steal them away is a little normally off the kind of angle that I think BNS wanted, and BNS's year for Diablerie and Camarilla Chronicles is a little harsh. So I'm a little bit more for, if it expands the story, you can maybe hand off one or two of these things. I'm also a big fan of if there is a incredible background reason why you would have one or two of these levels in your history. You were a Ventru who was captured by the True Bruja Setite Alliance and tried to be shown the truth that emotions, that you should not be controlled by your emotions. Yeah, you get one or two levels of Temporis. I don't think I'd have a lot of issues with that, because they can never teach it, because they don't have the blood themselves in them. So storytellers should be a little bit more lenient about handing these out at character creation, and incredibly harsh about trying to stop them in the middle of a game. So thank you, Dr. Bob, for that question, and Sad Fog of Decay, thank you again for the class, and Fairy Glass saying that the fake jaw is the true Bruja is my favorite takeaway from the class. I'm glad you all enjoy that. And hopefully we will be here with you in another 2 weeks for our next class. Thank you very much, and have a great day.